Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining today, and I hope that everyone is having a great start of the day. And thanks a lot for everyone to come here to listen to our thoughts around how could we make fintech products fear-proof by building trust within the ecosystem based on our work in the Indian context. So I am Nikita, and with me I have Swar. We both are the co-founders of Xenocollab, and we've been friends for over 15 years now. And a few years after our design college, we came together to start a service design consultancy together with the aim of practicing human-centered design for creating positive social impact. So we co-founded Xenocollab, which is a service design and social innovation consultancy. We are based in India with a very wide network of consultants across different parts of the world. We partner with nonprofits, social enterprises, tech companies to solve complex problems with them by creating impactful products and services that are centered towards the consumer's reality. So, in the past 8 years since we started the company, we have worked across different sectors such as healthcare, consumer products, digital public infrastructure, with financial inclusion being one of the key sectors that we work in. So today we have divided our talk into main chapters. In the first chapter, we will be giving you a little bit of cultural context of India and Indian consumers. That's where we come from, and most of our work lies here. Um, which will also help us in understanding the second chapter, which will focus primarily on why and how could we build trust within the fintech ecosystem to make it foolproof. And all of this will be based on the research and the field work that we have done uh, in this context.
So, like Nikita said, it's important to start with the socio-cultural context of a region because then your findings or learnings within any sector really become richer or start to make more sense. We would love to know if any of you have been to India before. Maybe you can just type it in the chat so we can keep an eye out. But for people who've not had the chance to visit India, maybe this could be your virtual tour to the country. So this is something, though, that people who've not been to India also know because most people describe India as a diverse and complex market. Many companies fail to understand how to succeed in a market that has so many layers of socio-cultural diversity, education, access to services, financial literacy. So one size doesn't really fit all here, and it's very important to understand how the nuances of this diversity really impacts behaviors, challenges, and experiences of people differently and in a very unique way. So the landscape and culture within the country changes every few hundred kilometers, which is the magic, but also the challenge here.
And as we travel across the country, we see very different degrees of trust within the systems and people. It's become one of the very most intrinsic nature of people to be sort of suspicious of strangers' intentions or even new brands for that matter. Many fear being deceived or rely, and hence they rely on cross checking information with their trusted source. Mainly, this stems from unequal access to resources, which makes people cautious and also frugal in protecting what they have. And this fear, and this fear seems to be the most prominent in the context of finance even more. So last year, our team had visited small rural village in Bihar, which is a northern state of India, and we were speaking to a very small dairy farmer who had very less education, had lower digital awareness, but she had seen a lot of experience with financial frauds and scams taking place in a village and also in a family. So she and her family got really scared when we started talking to her about the financial product that we were testing and wanting her feedback on that. And she really asked us to leave their house with the fear that we have come there to scam her or take away her money. So it's really interesting to also see how this behavior also have implications on digital products and features. For example, unlike many of the other countries, in India we have this four-digit PIN to confirm a ride in a cab hailing service. So this really helps in authenticating the driver and the rider to each other. to avoid any kind of incorrect cab picking up a wrong stranger or like a passenger, or leading to any other complications or even crime in some cases.
So, in a low trust society where you can't really rely on systems, you rely on communities and social circles. And communities are therefore very tight knit and trusted for sharing resources, information, seeking validation, or taking care of each other. And while that is changing now slowly with more nuclear families rather than what we call joint families, or people moving away for work, or rise of individualism, especially in the millennials and Gen Zs, you can still see the evidence of a tight knit community in how comfortable people or family members are with sharing devices, or how comfortable teens or friends are with sharing social media accounts. And if you face a problem, you have a very strong circle of people to rely on, and they really influence your point of view, your choices, and your decision making. Many times when we go out to do research, when we ask somebody, why do you use the apps that you do, or how did you first start using this app, most people from rural and urban India will say that my friend told me about it. And for people with low digital literacy, it is often their friends who even help them set it up and teach them how to use it and give them the confidence to use it. So UPI is something that's widely used in India. It's a form of digital payment that's done through scanning a QR code on your phone. And we've heard the same thing about UPI as well, where people say that everyone I know uses UPI since the pandemic, and it's been working so well for them without any issues. So that's why even I started using it, and my friend just showed me how to use it once, and I've been using it since. So we've heard this so many times, and we really believe that that's also one of the reasons why UPI has become so popular and such a success in the country.
And in like in many parts of the world, historically women has also been treated like second citizens in the society and even at homes. But it's not the same anymore in India, and it has been evolving with the modern times towards equitable experiences. So India has now undergone drastic changes economically, socially, and also digitally, especially in the past decade, with the rise of women's education and also their participation in the workflows. Along with it, we also have seen like introduction of DPI or even initiatives like Lakpati Didi that was targeted towards promoting financial independence and also entrepreneurial ventures for women. And even with this change, we see traditional socio-cultural dynamics still playing a very heavy role in some of the families, especially in the rural context. We have heard women talking about the importance of onboarding their husbands on a to understand the value and the importance of using a certain financial products so that she can use it freely. So unless the husband or the elders aren't convinced, her usage sometimes gets limited, which also shows that women still don't have a complete autonomy on their decisions in certain parts of the country.
India has emerged as the epicenter of innovation in the recent years, with building foundational digital public infrastructure like Aadhaar, that is digital identity, and more recently, account aggregator, which is for data sharing by consent, which is also something we've had the opportunity of working on in more recent times. These are used at scale across the country and are now being used as case studies for other countries to implement. And UPI, the payment mode that I'd mentioned earlier, is one such example of that. India is also the third largest startup hub in the world, with cities like Bangalore being called the Silicon Valley of India. And it also really celebrates frugal innovation and has a history of achieving maximum impact with minimum resources. The latest example of this has been the ambitious space missions like the Mars Orbiter mission, or Mangalyaan or Chandrayaan 3, that were launched successfully at a fraction of the cost of its Western counterparts.
But with all of this great work that we have done so far as a country, and also leapfrog to do some amazing progress in multiple domains. We also see this growing digital fear, anxiety, and also skepticism building in the world of especially the fintech. People definitely feel the fear and skepticism while using a fintech platform or even service, as they have experienced very mixed sort of experiences with it. We would now like to double click on why this behavior seems to be widely spreading, and what does it mean for the Indian consumer. So while there has been steady improvement in literacy, employment, and even income, most of the population across diverse income groups appear to have lack of financial literacy and also awareness. So with the less emphasis on the financial education, people end up missing out on opportunities or also risk to be exposed to some financial risk with because of the misinformation or even improper use of the financial product. There has been rise of fintech platforms and well-tech platforms in the country aimed at creating accessible financial infrastructure for people, offering them right from lending to investment. However, this democratization of financial products and information does not build the financial confidence or the awareness. Just having access to information does not help people to make the right decision or financial decision, but it sometimes ends up making them more vulnerable towards the risk or potential of loss of money. So, with the rise of digitization and access to digital products across geography, we still see unequal division of digital access and digital awareness. Rural households still has lower access to internet as compared to the urban areas, leading to different levels of digital literacy and awareness across the country, which makes them underconfident and also in using these new services and digital platforms, and making them more vulnerable towards misinformation or frauds in a way.
So with the rise of digital adoption and innovation, there's also rise in scams. According to the Reserve Bank of India, there's been an eightfold jump in bank-related frauds in the first half of FY 25-26 compared to the same time last year. Also, this is an older data point, but still a shocking one, that more than 50% of lending apps in 2021 were found to be fraud or illegal. So this has also inspired the Reserve Bank of India to launch various awareness campaigns across IVR or TV commercials to raise awareness on common scams and also help the public identify them. But for some people, it's still more difficult to get access to this information and be cautious. Women, for example, are proven to be more vulnerable to scams like emotional manipulation, threats, and exploitation. And people in rural India are more vulnerable to it due to lack of awareness and access. We have heard many such stories during field research where women have been targeted through lending apps for repayments by threatening them of leaking or morphing their photos. And now these are strong, independent women entrepreneurs whose confidence gets really shaken by incidents like these, and then they decide never to try lending apps because of shame or embarrassment of what happened. So similar scare stories are very rampant in India. One more thing about India that's widely known is Bollywood and our love for movies and songs. So recently there's this amazing Indian series called Jamtara that was released. We highly recommend you all to see it. Which basically highlights financial scams and how are they set up in small rural villages in India and how do they really work. Now, while such things create more awareness and makes people more aware of what is happening, but sometimes it also triggers fear by spreading misinformation or disinformation. WhatsApp, for example, is a very popular platform in India through which people communicate and share these stories of scams and frauds, but it's often not verified. And oftentimes, for people like my dad, this tag or forwarded many times actually acts as a validation of the information because he finds peace in the fact that so many people have forwarded it, so it must be true, instead of feeling realizing that it's signaling something that may in fact be fake. And while all of this does result in monetary losses, we would say that that's only the start of it. People who've been a victim of digital scams or frauds, they go back to using cash as a safer way of transacting. And this is really a hindrance to financial inclusion at scale. It becomes very difficult to scale fintech solutions if adoption is hindered by trust. Even for products that are designed intentionally to serve the best interest for people, if people are not trusting it enough to try it or understand its value and impact, it really won't be able to serve its purpose. And this erosion of trust, we feel, is the greatest tragedy in all of this. People who are victims of scams or frauds will completely withdraw from using any similar solution in the future. For example, the woman I had mentioned earlier who may have been threatened that her photo is going to be morphed or leaked will never again use an app that gives her a loan, even if it's built to benefit her or grow her business. And we can't really blame her for that. Because of this, consumers today have started voicing the need for transparency in privacy and security policies and are keeping a close check on breaches, having very strong grievance mechanisms in place and accountability to take action if something goes wrong. And this is why they also have a higher expectation from businesses today, and especially within fintech, to meet certain standards and also go above and beyond to empower their consumers through information. The more transparent you are today, the more you're going to be trusted.
And as we see, these effects are not just affecting the users, but also it's affecting the entire ecosystem, including the service providers and also the financial institutions. So these experiences, as Swar mentioned, go beyond just the loss of money or scam, but it impacts one very deeply emotionally. It at times also leads to feeling the pressure of being the sole provider of the family in some cases, and also feeling scared of getting scammed, or the fear of potential loss of money at the same time. So it stays with people for a very long time, and this leads to the sense of underconfidence or a continuous anxiety to not make any mistakes. So it's not only, we think, for the users to overcome the fears as they use our products, but it's also our responsibility to solve for this systematically, so that we can take users beyond the fear. And this cannot be solved just by better product solutions, but it has to be solved systematically and holistically. And it's no more about foolproofing the products, but it's the time has come where we need to fear-proof the ecosystem for better adoption and also healthy relationship with fintech products. And that brings us to the second chapter of our talk, where we'll try to articulate how can we make fintech solutions fear-proof more systematically. So we feel that now we need to move from product centric thinking to service centric thinking. Instead of treating the product as the way to solve for all of the problems, how can we use how can we make use of a holistic service that we offer to the user, which is in which the product is just one of the touch point. We need to think about how could we make the design for all, though for all of those different touch points in the service, in order to reduce fear and also increase trust systematically. And also it's about thinking of trust as a service that we offer through our product. So we need to consider and think how can we design for trust, is the main question. So we feel that we need to so when we think of product as one of the just one of the touch points within the service that we offer, we start thinking of service design thinking. The service design thinking model tells us to think of all of these three layers: product, people, and process. And right now, in most of the cases, these three aspects are thought about separately and also designed for separately. But we have seen that this thinking of separately of all of these layers leads to mismatched service experiences. And in order to build a cohesive service experience, we feel it's important to think of all of these three layers at once and design for them together with a singular goal. And in our context, in our case, our collective goal is to increase trust and reduce fear in fintech. So our product people, and process in our service needs to tackle this collective goal and to be able to design for it intentionally.
So why is it important to know what causes this fear is also to know how could you solve for it. Over the last few years, we worked with multiple projects and multiple organizations to understand financial needs of people and how to build inclusive fintech solutions. And what we've realized is that it all comes back to these three principles, which is awareness through contextual engagement, accountability through support, and trust by design. So, what we mean by awareness through contextual engagement is to ensure that the users are aware and informed throughout the journey to empower them and make them feel in control. To bridge the gaps in financial literacy by explaining concepts and bridging the gap of digital literacy by explaining to them how to navigate through the entire journey. And why contextual engagement is important is to give them contextual information at the right time in the journey without overloading or overwhelming them. Accountability through support is critical because this is where the trust really breaks. Users today look for signs of accountability when signing up for something new to make a decision on whether they want to be onboarded on something or not. So they look at, is this person reliable? Can I trust this person who's standing in front of me? Do they have a customer support helpline? Who do I reach out to if something goes wrong? Do they have a physical office? And what are they really looking for when they're asking us these questions is accountability. They're looking for, can you support me, or can you show me that you will take accountability if something goes wrong, or reassure me by hand holding. The third one, which is trust by design, is not just focused on product design. By design, we mean designing for trust intentionally and doing it consistently and intentionally across all touch points for users to know that you can trust this product, this experience, and this company. Through our work, we have explored the theme of trust very specifically and want to share some of our learnings today on how can we do this effectively in a very cluttered world with blurring lines between what is real and what is fake. But how do we really work with these principles, and how do you really go from reducing fear to building trust? So this was the service-centric thinking framework that we had shared earlier. This is the one Nikita had spoken about. And this is basically how you'd go about thinking of building trust too. Thinking of these three principles of trust by design, awareness through contextual engagement, and accountability through support, and how can they be applied across product, people, and ecosystem to build trust systemically. Now, Nikita is going to drop a link of the framework in the chat for everybody because it might be difficult to read everything right now based on the slide that we are sharing. And then you can also keep the link and hopefully use the framework in your own work as well in the future.
So when we break down these three principles and do they mean for product, people, and process, we end up arriving at different ways that could help us in creating the fear-proof fintech solutions that we are all thinking of. So while these are just the recommendations and they are very open-ended for everybody to pick up and ideate around on how to solve for it in a way that's relevant for you and your product very contextually. So these are some of the suggestions that we have come up with based on our experience. But everybody is free to make it their own based on the context and the requirement. So when we think of the first principle, which is awareness through contextual engagement, it's about figuring out different ways of building that contextual understanding, particularly for our particular users, through all of the service touch points to improvise the experience and also awareness. So, for example, as a product recommendation, we have practical content. What we mean here is to have communication mediums, contents such that is contextual and relevant for our particular target audience. Over the past few years, through our research work and also speaking with diverse consumer segments, we've realized that language is the biggest barrier in fintech products, and it is important to mindfully select design elements like icons and images and language that we use. But sometimes it's not about the language as in English, Hindi, but it's more about how can we explain certain concepts to people. So, what sticks with people is if the content is usable and practical for them, or is it just some very complex theoretical jargon? Sometimes a very simple diagram to explain a new concept, like, say, account aggregator, works much better than explaining them with longer and complex explanation. So, this simple and contextual way to explain new concepts really help the users to be informed and take informed decisions and just not get scared of it directly. For example, with privacy terms, what if we explain it to somebody explicitly in a way that's understandable for them before they actually give their consent? The second principle is accountability through support. So, when it comes to using financial platforms, what people want to know is that who do they hold accountable for in case something goes wrong, or who to reach out to if they face any issues. So, having a strong sense of accountability can take the platform and also the company very high on the trust meter of our users. And similarly, when we think of how people make the or the people who are involved in the journey, for example, the bank representatives or the loan officers, accountable for providing support and share a standardized level of experience when it comes to grievance resolution. So even if our goal is to make all products fully self-served, since that's a very sustainable model for growth and also business, we have to consider and understand that we have to meet the consumers where they are today and design for a learning curve for them. So for a certain user segment, having someone trustworthy explain the concept or how to use the product really works in building trust and confidence in them. In most of the cases, the users show the loyalty and trust towards that particular representative than the company itself. So these personal relationships also go a very long way. Hence, having a direct line of contact with the representative or the company add that one more layer of trust within the consumers.
And now, when we talk about trust by design and how that can be applied across product ecosystem, it is through contextual assurance by intentionally building trust through a community and building brand recognition. So again, each of these three, very much like the previous statements or recommendations that Nikita shared, are complex problem statements to solve on their own. But basically, through our experience, we've learned that this is what it boils down to. So, to expand on one of this, which is brand recognition, we've learned that people in India, very much like many other places around the world, place a lot of importance on brand visibility and really take it to heart. So, visibility through hoardings, billboards, newspaper ads, reputable institutions, associations with the government or certain celebrities really stands out and really sticks. Building such associations strategically, therefore, is very important in building and maintaining trust. Also, figuring out how to make these associations or collaborations visible through all channels is also equally important. So, our goal with this framework is to summarize years of learnings that we've had through multiple projects for all of us to have a great starting point for how do we actually design for trust and start to address people's fear when using fintech solutions so that we can truly unlock the potential of fintech for building equity and inclusion globally. These findings do come from our work in India, but we do believe that it's applicable globally. And most of us would have found similar findings through the work that we do in the same field. So, this is by no means meant to be something new or radical. In fact, we really hope that you've had similar findings in your work as well. But our goal with this was to be able to see all of the learnings in one glance and start to use this as a comprehensive and systemic way to design trust based fintech solutions. And we are not claiming that with this, people's fears will be erased. Fear is a very human emotion and will always be a part of the experience. But what we mean is that the way that we design for customer delight, we should also design to alleviate fear rather than letting it fester or giving to it as a reality. You can intentionally design to build trust, reduce fears and anxiety, and allow more people to benefit from the products that we design. It doesn't need to be very radical. It just needs to be intentional, small changes that add up to building trust, building confidence, and in the end, inclusion for people who are often excluded. So we hope you've enjoyed listening to us. If you have similar stories, learnings, or have questions for us, feel free to reach out. We love coffee chats, and these are some of our favorite topics to talk about. So thanks a lot for joining and listening in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.